or a pumpkin?
I was a pumpkin, a big orange pumpkin.
A big orange pumpkin. And were there a lot of children out there?
Not so much.
No? Did you get a lot of candy?
Yeah, I got a lot of candy. Mommy's eating all the chocolate bars.
Well, tell Mommy that's your candy, honey.
Okay.
Tell her.
Stop eating all my chocolate bars, Mommy. Daddy's sick.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. For my monster from his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise,
He did the mash,
he did the monster mash.
the monster mash.
It was a graveyard
He
smash.
did the mash,
It caught on in a flash.
he did the mash.
He did the monster mash.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I'm Rob McConnell. Yep, after 32 years, still at the same email address, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And for the best of the X Zone TV channel, visit simultv.com. You know, as we parents bring up our children, we tell them not to lie. We tell them smoking's no good for you. And then we tell them not to take candy from strangers, right? Except at Halloween, of course. And I believe that Halloween is maintained, advertised, and marketed by the American and Canadian Dental Association. That's just my take on it. And as a parent, have you ever noticed that the Halloween candy that you buy to give out to the kids who aren't supposed to take candy from strangers kind of disappears, and that the stock that you had prior to Halloween has diminished? Mind you, that explains why the kids are jumping up, down, and running around the house, and you have to scrape them off the ceiling with some sort of utensil, because they're the little people who've been eating the candy. And of course, the wife has to take some blame too there. Halloween. This is where you get dressed up. This is where you go trick-or-treating. I remember some kids coming to the door saying, "Charity, please." And my answer to that was, well, charity begins at home. Goodbye. But that's just me. I guess I'm more of a Scrooge at Halloween than I am at Christmas time. And many of you who know me find that hard to believe, but that's how I see it. Joining me this hour is one person that I love talking to, having here on the show. Benjamin Radford is his name. And Ben, welcome back to the show. How are things with you and Halloweeny?
Things are great. Thanks for having me back on. It's Halloween is always the one of the busiest times for skeptics and folklorists, because there's always some weirdness that needs attention or debunking, whether it's about Halloween sadists or Satanists or you name it. That's when the weirdness comes out.
I still can't believe that Halloween has lasted this long. Now, with all the different religious philosophies out there who go against Christmas, we can't say Merry Christmas anymore. It has to be Happy Holidays. Who have fought vehemently about Easter being celebrated. I have never heard anything negative about Halloween. I've never heard of any religious group trying to get rid of Halloween. Have you?
Well, not Halloween specifically. Of course, there are lots of groups that have problems with it. Usually, the complaint is that people believe that the holiday itself is somehow sinister or satanic, and that's actually ahistorical. We have a pretty good idea of where Halloween comes from, and it actually traces back thousands of years to a Gaelic festival called Samhain. And during this time. It was sort of this annual communal meeting at the end of the harvest year. And it was sort of, the change of seasons and going into the winter time and things like that. So it was really about sort of change of season, change of life, and things like that. And it was less about death or evil than preparing for the dormancy of the winter time. And that's really sort of that was one of the origins of it, and it wasn't scary. It was more of this sort of It wasn't scary. It was more of this animist worldview, and yet to this day, some fundamentalist church leaders think that there's somehow something satanic about it.
But where does the satanic side come in?
Well, there's a couple things. One of the elements of it is that that oftentimes during Samhain, and we know this from little, we have some sparse records of it, but there's some idea of what happened to it. Is that the Druid leaders would sometimes wear animal skins and heads during the ceremonies, sometimes with antlers.
Okay.
So you can see where this is going, right?
Yeah.
But in fact, the truth of it is that there was nothing satanic about it. In fact, the idea of Satan itself wouldn't even be invented for many centuries. The Druids and the Gaelic people that celebrated Samhain, they had no concept of the Christian devil. So it was they wouldn't even know what you were talking about if you said that it was satanic or evil.
You were talking about the wearing of skins with heads with horns. The Indians, the natives, Americans and Canadians wore them on the plains when they were hunting.
Yeah, I mean, It was not a there's nothing inherently strange about it. I mean, but one of the reasons why I think Halloween is especially sort of salient and sort of scary to some people is that it involves disguises. It involves something that appears one way that is in fact another way. And the most obvious manifestation of that is costumes, right? So you have little Susie, little Bobby dressing up as, a Marvel superhero or a witch or a princess or what have you. And of course, sometimes adults as well. And so you have this notion that things aren't quite what they seem and there's trickery involved. And that sort of transformed into a broader sort of uneasiness with things that seem to be good or wholesome, and like, for example, candy, right? So candy, universally loved by children, adults, and everywhere, and yet there's this sort of latent fear about tainted Halloween candy, for example.
Yeah, I can understand the concerns about costumes prior to COVID. But ever since COVID, we've all had to wear masks anyway. And, little Tommy dressing up like little Sally or little Sally dressing up like little Tommy. Hey, these are just signs of the times.
Exactly. I mean, welcome to the world in 2021.
Yeah.
And we can trace back some of the traditions of costumes to, for example, what was called mumming or guising, in which this comes primarily from Ireland and Britain, where people would disguise themselves and go door to door, asking for food or treats or a little bit of money, sometimes in exchange for praying for the dead. So it was like it wasn't a trick or treat insofar as if you don't give me something, I'll put soap on your windows or deflate your tires. It was people dressing up and going around, sort of alms with the poor. And if, for example, your grandfather had died or some family member or some friend, they would offer prayers in exchange for a little pittance, and they'd go on from place to place. And trick-or-treat itself didn't really start in the U.S. Until World War II. So it actually doesn't have that long history here in the States.
What was the reason for it starting during World War II? Any idea?
Well, I think that the part of it was that it wasn't really a children's holiday.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I mean, Halloween was brought over, as I mentioned, by the Irish, primarily Irish immigrants and British immigrants, and before then it was something that families did, but it wasn't really child-centered as it is today, and that really didn't become focused on kids until about the 1950s. And that, in sort of coincidental with that, was that this is when there began being manufactured masks in mass production, right? So this is where you had, the plastic was available. This is, of course, after the war.
Yeah.
And so there were more ways to commercialize and market, if you will, Halloween to families and kids.
I'm probably going to get a lot of negative emails for what I'm going to say now, but I wonder how many people actually come out of the closet at Halloween.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that.
Well, that's because you're not as warped as I am, Ben.
Well, I do my best, but you are a high water mark, my friend.
And God bless the Irish. Not only did they bring over potatoes, not only did they bring over leprechauns, not only did they bring over Guinness, but they brought over Halloween. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with a few notes from our sponsors. Geez, I hope we don't have any candy sponsors, Craig, because if we do, I just lost them. Leave it to me, huh? I still say one of these days I'm going to get a call from the Vatican, and if they do call, I'm not here. Our guest this hour is Benjamin Radford. His website is benjaminradford.com, and we'll be back getting into more trouble. I mean, as the show continues on the other side of this break. This is the X Zone, and don't forget, X Zone Nation, check out my newest favorite radio station in the world, Classic Rock, Classic Talk, Classic 1220. Their website, you can listen to it around the world, www.classic1220.ca. Don't go away, because we'll be back as Halloween week continues here in the X Zone. Oh, I hope my dentist isn't listening.
From his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise,
He did the mash,
he did the monster
the
mash.
monster mash.
It was
Ivan was an old bear tracker. Tom was a man with dreams. And Ernie came along and I wrote the songs about a creature that few's ever seen. Monsters, myths, and mysteries, legend, tales, and facts. It brought us all together, and it's a reason for the fact. Up in North California, where the redwoods reach the sky.
Benjamin Radford is my guest this hour, X Zone Nation. His website is benjaminradford.com. Ben, I remember going out to trick-or-treating with my younger brother when we were just kids, and nobody ever worried about the candies. Gosh, they used to throw in pennies in the bag. They used to throw in peanuts, jelly beans, whatever. And yet today we have to be so careful.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of these rumors and sort of moral panics really track along with social anxieties. So this is why right around Halloween, although other times of the year as well, but particularly Halloween, we see these other anxieties that are sort of laid on to Halloween and kids and things like that. So, you sort of touched on the idea of candy being dangerous to kids, not just from a dental point of view, an obesity point of view, although there is that, but this notion that there's the stranger danger fear, this idea that there are strangers out there trying to harm kids, put razors in apples. I'm not sure who's giving out apples these days, but I'm sure somebody is. And things like that. So it's in many ways these sorts of fears that circulate and rumors that circulate around Halloween sort of crystallize social anxieties.
I was in Costco the other day, and they had these big boxes of face masks for sale. So I bought a couple of those. Every kid who's going to come here is going to get a free face mask in a Ziploc bag.
That does sound pretty creepy, actually.
Yeah, it does. Hey, what the heck? Hauntings, stories of hauntings. You must get a lot of this because you do a lot of media as well as your own show. What's your favorite haunted story?
Oh, there's so many. Oftentimes I'm asked to sort of give an opinion on some famous haunted house or some famous movie or something. So I constantly get emails, what's the true story behind The Exorcist or the Amityville Horror Story, or something like that. And I've written about it, but as have many other people, and so I often sort of direct people to those websites that some sort of good skeptical, critical thinking media literacy analyses. Other times, people will contact me with sort of weird personal stories seeking help. In fact, there was one that actually just happened just about a week ago. There was a woman that contacted me, and she wrote to me saying that she was possessed by the spirit of a man that had died in 2013 in Florida.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. It's always difficult in my position because, I'm, as you mentioned, I'm a writer, and I'm sort of, do some TV and stuff. And so I have a little bit of a profile, and that cuts both ways. On one hand, it's nice because it gets some of the work seen. On the other hand, it means that people, you get emails, and
Yep.
and I'm sure you get even weirder ones than I do. And and these are some of the hardest ones to deal with, right? Because, oftentimes the people that reach out to me are people who are sincerely frightened.
That's right.
They're genuinely, and we talked about this last time I was on the show.
Yeah.
There are people who are genuinely frightened that there's some evil entity in their house. They're genuinely scared that there's a curse on them or something else. And so, I don't want to just sort of ignore the email because, they're probably somebody who sincerely needs help. On the other hand, I mean, I have a degree in psychology, but I'm not I'm not trained for this. I can't. So in this case, I said, okay. I wrote back and said, okay, I'm super busy, but I'll take a quick time to talk to you. And so I interviewed her for about half an hour. And again, this is very recently. This is about a week or two back. And it was the strangest thing. She told me the story. I won't go into the whole thing, but she told me the story about how she had gone to a friend's house recently, and she started playing with a Ouija board. And of course, that set off red flags for me because oftentimes people believe that you can communicate with the dead through a game you could buy at Target and Costco, which I've always been a little skeptical of that, but whatever. And and so I said, well, what's going on? I said, well, so it turned out that this person that she believed was inside her body, take that as you will, was actually an old ex-boyfriend of hers. And she was wanting, so it was the strangest thing. So I'm on a Zoom call with her.
Right.
And I'm talking to her, and she clearly has this entity that she believes is inside her body. And so as we're talking, her shoulders slump, and her voice deepens,
right,
and she starts talking in this male voice.
Oh boy! And
she's literally, or she certainly believes that she's channeling another person right in front of me. And so she was like, she says, I'm trying to help her resolve the situation. And I'll tell her something, and she'd say, well, you can ask him yourself. And then she sort of does this almost like an impressionist thing. And he's communicating with me, and it was this, and it wasn't a put on. I mean, she was clearly genuinely believing this. And so it was strange. And I tried to sort of, bring her back to reality and try to give her ways of coping with it and dealing with it.
There are those people out there who have issues who actually do believe that they're being possessed, but it's their own multiple personality syndrome that kicks in.
Yeah, and one
bells?
of the interesting things is it's so easy for people to think that. And if you don't know anything about psychology, or if you haven't talked to these people, that can sound very outlandish. But the truth is that it's very easy for the ordinary, average, non-psychotic person to at times believe that they have some external force or influence in them. And I often see this in my musician friends. I can't tell you the number of times when I'll be talking to somebody and they'll say, "Yeah, I was in the zone," And and I just felt, and they'll tell me, it's like, and these are skeptics. These are, they don't mean this literally. They're not literally claiming that some external force entered their body.
Right.
But they will tell you, and I mean, as a creative person, doing art or whatever it is, it's easy to sort of feel like you're a channel for, creativity and this and that. And under some circumstances, that can be mistaken for some external intelligence that's possessing you.
What about all these ghost hunters who keep on going to all the same haunted place time after time after time? I was talking to one last week, and I said, has it ever occurred to you that the ghosts may not want you guys to keep trespassing there, and everybody goes there? And she says, well, no, they want us there because they know that we know that they're still there. And they talk to us. I ask them questions. They give me answers.
Uh-huh.
I said, okay, well, what kind of questions do you ask them? Well, I say, are you there? I said, okay, what other questions do you ask?
Seems pretty basic.
Can you hear me?
And if there's no response, the answer doesn't mean that they don't exist. It's that they choose not to answer.
You got it.
Yeah, it is. You raise a really interesting question, and I've asked ghost hunters that before. I mean, and one thing that often doesn't get discussed about ghost hunting is exactly what you're saying. Is because as you know, there are literally thousands and thousands of ghost hunting groups in North America and around the world.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they're influenced by these TV shows and Zach Baggins and all this and that. And they go into their local haunted place, right? So there's some cemeteries, some broken down building, whatever else. But there's also a very robust ghost tourism industry.
Oh, paratourism, yeah, big time.
Oh yes, huge, right? And
Yeah.
so and you see this. I mean, it's part of a broader sort of paranormal industry, right? So if you go to Salem, for example, of course, there's a witch trial. There's a witch tourism thing. If you go to Louisiana and New Orleans, of course, there's voodoo and witches everywhere. So, and in the same way, if you go to the Pacific Northwest, California, and of course, there's Bigfoot and things like that. But there are many places that are famous for being haunted. So, for example, there's the Stanley Hotel.
The Waverly
Institute. I can think of several hotels here in New Mexico. There's the St. James, La Fonda, and so on. And one thing that has struck me, and you touched on this a second ago, is that these places, Myrtle's Plantation is another good example. I've been there a couple times in Louisiana, and they're sort of famous for being haunted, and that's a big part of their business is. Hey, we were featured on Ghost Adventures, and see us on season 5, blah blah blah. And so they have people coming from across the country and sometimes around the world to stay in a haunted place. And anyways, I'll wrap it up. But so it's the curious thing is that what they don't seem to recognize is that these ghost hunter groups, they just cycle through there.
Yep.
And over the course of months and years, there has been hundreds and hundreds of investigations, and they've all come up with almost nothing. It's the same crappy photos and weird experiences, and there's nothing there.
Same old, same old.
Exactly.
All right, buddy, stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Benjamin Radford and I will return as we continue seriously taking a look at Halloween. We'll be back. Don't go away.
Up in North California, where the redwoods reach the skies, 3 men with a gold and a pact that they'd hold, and a promise till the day that they die.
All around old Cape Horn, ships of the line, ships of the morn. Some who wish they'd never been born, they are the ghosts of Cape Horn. All around a riddle rum with a rim dim diddy and a rum dum dum. Sailing away at the break of dawn, they are the ghosts of Cape Horn.
And that's Canada's very own Gordon Lightfoot. singing The Ghosts of Cape Horn. Benjamin Radford's my guest this hour. His website is benjaminradford.com. You and I were talking during the news break, and I was telling you that I've been doing this show now for 32 years, and absolutely nothing has changed except the people. It's like not only are they recycling the places that they go to, but they recycle people as well. And still, there's no evidence of anything, except now they're using cliche words like quantum physics,
Right.
string theory, multi-dimensions, multi-universes.
Bringing in the Deepak, yeah.
Yeah.
It really is remarkable, and you know, when you talk to ghost hunters, as of course you and I both have, and others as well, you know, oftentimes there's no sense of history, and they think that this was invented, you know, 15 years ago with the TV shows, and you know, when you try to tell them, like, look, I mean, people have been looking for evidence of ghosts for over a century now.
Yeah.
And so you know, so I have to explain to him, like, you know, you believe you're doing good, you know, cutting edge research. You think you're on the edge of the unknown. And the fact is that you're just doing the same stuff that has not been fruitful, for decades now. And they just don't get it. And one thing, and you know, you began the show by talking about, you know, what some of the ghost hunters believe and stuff. And you know, one thing that often gets lost here is that previously, throughout most of human history, when people talked about communicating with the dead, they weren't talking about going to some allegedly haunted location and trying to provoke the spirit into answering your questions. It was the spirits they were trying to contact were their family members. They were lost loved ones and friends like that. So that was, you know, so if you talk to somebody, if you brought someone, you know, who lived in the 1800s, and you said, yes, you know, this is what ghost hunters do, they would say, why would you go to some other location and talk to the spirit of somebody you didn't even know? What are they going to talk to you about? You didn't know them.
That's right.
Right? Why? I mean, the notion, the very premise that modern ghost hunters use, that is that there's, you know, these spirits and they're sort of trapped in between these worlds and this and that. That's a relatively new phenomenon. That was sort of emerged during the spiritualism in the 1800s. And has sort of, you know, been refined over the years, but it's, you know, it shows you just how culture bound ideas and beliefs about ghosts are.
You've got places like Waverly where tons of ghost researchers, investigators, whatever they want to call themselves, go. And, excuse me, and they all come back with different stories. If the ghosts were there and if they were doing research, wouldn't they come back with the same stories?
You would think. You know, here's the thing about that.
Okay.
Is that you know, when you have a famous haunted place like Waverly, like Myrtle's Plantation, like different ships and things like that,
Yeah.
then there is a pre-existing legend that people know and people can look up because it's on Wikipedia. It's in ghost hunting books. And so you have this set of stock characters, right? So if you go to the Whaley House in San Diego, you go to the Myrtle's Plantation, you go, you know, take your pick. And so there, you know, people know, because they've seen it on TV or they've seen ghost hunters, wherever else, they know who is supposed to be there, right? So they say, like, for example, I did an investigation in Montego Bay, Jamaica, of a place called Rose Hall.
Yeah.
The allegedly the White Witch of Rose Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And people who go to this former great house, this former plantation, if you read the stories about it, you know that it's allegedly haunted by Annie Palmer, who allegedly killed several of her husbands and was tortured slaves and this and that. And so when ghost hunters and even just ordinary people who are curious about ghosts, when they go to these locations, they're pre-populated with characters. like you would in a role playing game or a book or a movie, right? And so they will interpret any weird thing, any weird sound. Oh, that must have been the ghost of Annie, or
Right.
oh, that I'm getting a scary sense over there. That must be the evil colonel, right? There are all these weird caricatures, these stock characters that are sort of shoehorned into these ghost stories, and oftentimes there's no historical basis to them whatsoever.
So they go in with a preconceived concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. They go in with a preconceived concept, and so, for example, they take their cues as to what to expect, again, from TV shows, from ghost hunting books, and whatever else. And so, for example, there's a famous hotel here in New Mexico that is allegedly haunted by a woman, and she is associated with perfume, with a sort of floral perfume. And of course, if you tell people that,
They'll smell it.
and then enough people will say, "Do you smell that? I kind of do. It must be Susie." Right? And so much of what people interpret as being ghosts is subjective experience. And one interesting part of this is that when you talk to people, ordinary average people who believe in ghosts and have ghost experiences, it's nothing like you see on TV. It's nothing like the Hollywood films and the dramatic, sensationalized, scary things. It's not the poltergeist stuff. It is very simple, subtle, mundane things. It's a scent. It's a dark image out of the corner of your eye late at night. It's missing keys. It's an odd sound as you're sleeping. It's things like that. And so the experiences that people actually genuinely report are so far removed from the Hollywood versions that it's like night and day.
I don't know if I've told you this before, but when I was at CKDB in St. Catharines, we used to go on local ghost adventures, and one was at the Fort George in Niagara on the Lake.
I've been to Fort George several times.
Okay. Now,
I know it well.
All right, so you go on the tour. Kyle Upton was our tour guide, and they play the part. They're great actors, and we're going through, and the little girl that's seen in the tunnel, Sarah Ann, and then the violins that play from the quarters, and of course people are gathering glimpses of this, and they're hearing the violins, and at the end of the tour guide said, "Do you have any questions?" I said, "Yeah, I've got one." So the ghosts that people were hearing or experiencing here are because this is where the fort was, right? "Oh, that's right." I said, "No." The fort was 500 feet from here, and it was rebuilt here. So how can the ghosts be here? Well, that was the last time I was asked to go on a ghost tour.
You're absolutely right. In fact, my most recent book on ghosts, titled "Investigating Ghosts," actually has 2 chapters on Fort George and Sarah Ann.
Yeah.
So I know exactly the story you're telling, and you're exactly right. It's fascinating because it doesn't fit their narrative. Right?
Yeah.
Their narrative is, and a ghost is seen here because this is where the soldier died.
Yeah.
And it's like, how? Number one, the fort wasn't here. Number 2, all this is rebuilt stuff. Half of this is from Canadian Tire.
Yeah.
And third of all, you don't know this. These are you're taking legends and stories and sort of recasting them as historical accounts when in fact there may be nothing to it at all.
Just like the story of Captain Swayze in the basement of the Angel Inn in Niagara on the Lake. And then you've got story after story after story, the place where they had the King Henry VIII's feast. And
I remember that.
Yeah,
That's right.
It's like, why don't you just tell the truth?
I'll tell you a quick story about Fort George.
I've got about 40 seconds till I go to my break.
I'll save it for later.
Okay. Benjamin, tell our listeners where they can get books that you've done and where they can listen to your show.
Sure. I have a podcast called Squaring the Strange. Squaring, The Strange. Of course it is. And you can find that on iTunes and wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, I've got a dozen or so books. Most relevant here would probably be Investigating Ghosts, the scientific search for spirits, which is available. I try to tell people to go to local independent bookstores. Not always possible, but you know where to go.
I've been told where to go many times. Mostly by my wife. When I was born, my mother said I should be on stage, and I said, "Yes, Mom." She said, "Yeah, the next one leaving town." Stick around, I got a ton of them. Exonation, my guest is the one and only Benjamin Radford. His website is benjaminradford.com, and we'll both be back on the other side as we wrap up this hour here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. Not very far from Fort George. We'll be back. Don't go away.
All around old Cape Horn, ships of the line, ships of the morn. Some who wish they'd never been born, they are the ghosts of Cape Horn. All around a riddle rum with a rim dim diddy and a rum dum dum. Sailing away at the break of dawn, they are the ghosts of Cape Horn. See them all in sad repair, demons dance everywhere, southern gales, tattered sails, and none to tell a tale.
Yeah. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. 1-800. Get the damn ghost out of here because I'm afraid of it. Horrible. Just horrible. Hey, Benjamin, before we went to the break, you were just going to tell us another story about Fort George.
Oh, yeah. So I had done a couple investigations there when I lived in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And there was I was contacted by a film crew out of I think it was a Toronto University, and they were asking. I guess they'd heard of me, and they sort of wanted to have a sort of token skeptic on the show, which is usually my role, as you know. I'm brought on in the last 3 minutes to try and refute everything that you saw in the previous 52 minutes. But in this particular case, I was there with some ghost hunters from the Golden Horseshoe, and they were actually quite nice. We all got along pretty well. They knew where I was coming from, and they knew where they were coming from. But it was this we did investigation in the soldiers' barracks, among other places there. And if people haven't been to Fort George, it's really a beautiful place. It's definitely worth a look. It's just probably not haunted, but in any event. So I remember it was an overnight thing, and of course, because they wanted it to sort of, it's more dramatic and sensational if no one's slept in 24 hours. So we began the night in one of the soldiers' barracks, and so they began by having some of the ghost hunters and some of the intuitives or psychics try and communicate with the ghost, and so. It was, I think, 3 or 4 of us plus a camera crew and audio guy. And I'm just setting aside, I'm not there to cause trouble. I'm not there to, I'm just there to just listen and watch and see what's going on. And so and if you've seen any of the ghost hunting TV shows, this was the template. And they said, okay, if there's anything there, give us a sign. And we're waiting. And then nothing happens. It's a little embarrassing to the ghost hunters because of course they're asking for a sign of ghost and we're not getting anything at all, which is frankly unusual given what the barracks look like. And this is actually, I think, in November, so it was super cold. And then say, oh yeah, we know there's a spirit here, give us a sign. We wait. And as you know, Fort George is very near Niagara-on-the-Lake.
It is, yeah.
And so there's a car alarm. It's clearly a car alarm. I say, that's not a sign. And I got a glare. If looks could kill, glare from all the ghost hunters. Like, okay, just to be clear, the fact that a car alarm went off that's a kilometer away is not, I'm not calling that a sign. He's like, okay, fine, whatever. So,
Well, why would a sign be a kilometer away? Wouldn't the sign be right there where the ghost is?
Yes, thank you. Right, that's what I'm trying to get along. And it's like, and I'm going through this whole thing, and again, I'm there. I'm actually wasn't quite sure why I was there, because the producer contacted me and said, look, we're going to be having these ghost hunters go there, and we want you to explain what they find. And this was before the show. And I said, well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I said, I can tell you what's going to happen is that I'll be there, and one of the ghost hunters will go in a room and say, oh, I'm sensing an evil presence in that corner. and the producer's like, yeah. And I'll say, and what do I do with that? No, you're not. I mean, how can I possibly investigate or and she's
validate?
Like, oh,
yeah.
I hadn't thought of that. I was like, well, of course you haven't thought about that, because you're trying to make some dramatic TV. I'm trying to actually investigate. And I said, look, I'll do the show. I'll be happy to participate, but just so you know, going in, a lot of the so-called evidence generated by these ghost hunters is not falsifiable. It's not investigatable. I'm getting a weird feeling in this room. And okay, I don't know what to tell you.
So how did the production end up? I mean, nobody lynched you because you're obviously still here.
It ended up just fine. Actually, it turned into I later on got a DVD of it. It was titled Encounters. And it was clearly a student effort. I mean, I don't think it was a broadcast. So it was I think it was University of Toronto, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a graduate student program. Again, I don't think it aired, but they did end up making a show of it. And it was fine. I mean, there were no hurt feelings, and I got a chapter or two out of it for one of my books, but I enjoyed it because I got the chance to be with ghost hunters, with sincere people, and that was one of my first experiences doing TV crews at the time. And so, I got to know them. And so we were chatting, and like, look, I'm not Mr. Mean Skeptic. You're not this and that. It's like, just, tell me. I was talking to one of the ghost hunting psychics. Said, when you say you're experiencing a ghost, what does that mean? And again, I'm not trying to trap you.
You're trying to learn.
I don't know what it would mean to sense a ghost. Mm-hmm. And she says, well, it just sort of is an odd feeling. And I said, well, it's people have odd feelings all the time. That doesn't mean it's a ghost. And she sort of grudgingly admitted it. And so I think I imparted a little bit of my point of view where, look, I'm not saying ghosts don't exist. I'm not saying you can't detect ghosts. I'm just pointing out that a lot of what you're claiming as evidence for ghosts is sort of subjective and, not really anything I can do with. And she's like, yeah, I guess you're right. So we actually came to a bit of an understanding. So that was good insofar as that happened.
Well, I believe that there are good ghost investigators out there. And the best investigators that I have spoken to over the years are also historians.
Mm-hmm.
And Larry Lawson in Florida, in Indian River, is one of those people. He's a former police detective himself, and he's a historian. And he does his tours that are history-based. And
Mm-hmm.
he says now there are people who see or hear things at this place or that place. And he doesn't put the image in the mind that, yes, there is something there. But it's nice to see, like people like Larry and other ghost researchers who actually take the time to get the history of the locations where they are, instead of just bringing the people in, queuing them up, giving them a little prep talk outside, and implanting the power of suggestion in them when they go into the location.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. And I mean, and the other angle that I come from is, because I'm not a historian, although I often do historical research in the context of my investigations, but my angle is really folklore. And when you get down to it, a lot of ghost hunting and ghost stories, it's by definition folklore. It's, these are ghost stories, and so and a lot of what passes for ghost investigation, ghost hunting, is really what folklore is called legend tripping. And it's it's when there's a pre-existing legend and they sort of act it out. They go to a place and they sort of do these rituals and sort of like you might go to a mirror and say Bloody Mary 16 times or something. And so there's a whole lot of really unrecognized folklore in a lot of ghost investigations.
Did you say go to the mirror and say Bloody Mary 16 times?
Yes, that, or Candyman. I mean, there's different versions of it, but yes.
So what's your favorite part of Halloween?
Ooh, my favorite part of Halloween.
Yeah.
Honestly, my favorite part is probably the elaborate costumes. Not so much during a pandemic, of course, but I enjoy seeing people do their groove, and there's always there's some people who just don't care, and that's fine. But then there are some people who they've been waiting, they've been chomping at the bit since July to put together this amazing costume. So I really enjoy the costumes and just sort of the getting together and celebrating something sort of fun and spooky and things like that. I'm not as keen on having to debunk myths about tainted candy and things like that, but because that just sort of unnecessarily scares kids. I mean, and the world is scary enough without sort of manufacturing these things.
Isn't that the truth? Well, we know one thing for sure. Once Halloween is over on October 31st, November 1st, the Christmas carols start.
Yes, indeed. If not already.
If not already. Benjamin, once again, let our listeners know how they can find out more about you.
Sure. I'm around on social media. You can find me on Facebook at Ben Radford. I love caricatures, so you may see a caricature of me on my icon. I have a podcast called Squaring the Strange. It comes out every 2 weeks, and we're now celebrating our 5th year. And we have all sorts of interesting topics there. And, of course, you can find some of my books, including Investigating Ghosts and Scientific Paranormal Investigation, online.
Benjamin, thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight. And to you and yours, happy Halloween.
Thanks. Same to you.
Good night, Ben.
Night.
Well, that's it for tonight, Exonation. Back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. So from everyone here at the X Zone, Rob McConnell Media, and for all our broadcast affiliates around the world, to you and yours, thank you very much for joining us. And a special thanks to my senior executive producer, my lovely wife and best friend, Laura Rogers. So until tomorrow night, remember, always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone.